Hello everyone. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good afternoon, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this Sustainability Talk series. My name is Roshan Arabekun. I am Associate Professor at the Institute of Climate Change, in short IPI, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. I will be your moderator for this event. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic and well-being of each participant, this event is fully virtual. I would like to thank all the participants for joining today's talk. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll begin shortly. I humbly request you to mute your microphone as the event begins. Thank you. Hi Kanjana, can you hear me? Great, we'll begin shortly now. Yes. Can you see me, Ija and everyone?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay. Hello, Dr. Iyad.
Thank you, Dato. Thank you. Great.
Yeah.
So, as
yes,
mark of
yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Sustainability Talk series again. Before we begin, for Muslims, let us together recite Al-Fatiha. For non-Muslims, you may pray in your own record. Ladies and gentlemen, today's talk, as you know, is entitled Al-Mizan, Covenant for the Earth by Dr. Iyad Abumoghli, Director of Faith for Earth, Strategic Engagement with Faith-Based Organizations, United Nations Environment Program, based in Nairobi, Kenya. In the month of World Environment Day Awareness Campaign, this webinar is organized by University Kebangsaan, Malaysia, Yayasan Saim Dabri Chair for Sustainability, in short, UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability, hosted at Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. This event is organized also in cooperation with Research Center for Sustainable Process Technology, CESPRO, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, and Institute of Climate Change, IPI, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia. I can see very good number. We are just crossing 80 participants on live. Great, excellent. And hopefully there are a number of participants are on, yes, there is a number of person on our Facebook Live. And I also can see our Director of Institute of Climate Change, Professor Dr. Muhammad Nizam Muhammad Said, and Professor Iyad Dr. Muhammad Sobri Takrif, co-chair holder, UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability. Thank you very much, professors, for your presence. And thank you, everyone, all the participants. Thank you very much for your presence. We greatly appreciate it. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to introduce our honorable guest, Yang Bahagia Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharuddin. So, Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharuddin is currently Director General, Institute of Islamic Understanding Malaysia, IKIM, and chairholder of UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability. Datuk Azizan is also an honorary professor at the Center for Civilizational Dialogue in University Malaya. Her specialization includes environmental ethics, religion and sustainable development, Islam and science bioethics, interfaith, intercivilizational dialogue. She has published more than 200 publications such as books, book chapters, monographs, journal articles, and newspaper articles. She is also involved as member of various advisory and consultative committees at the national and international levels. She was a member of the International Bioethics Committee, IBC, of UNESCO Paris from 2014 to 2017. She was a lead member of the drafting team for the Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change, IDCC, endorsed by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. She is active member of the Majlis Kebangsaan bagi Hal Ehwal Ugama Islam Malaysia, MKI, Panel Perundingan dan Pencegahan Rasuah, PPPR, Malaysia Anti-Corruption Commission, MACC, and etc. In 2016, Datuk Azizan is the recipient of the Langkawi Award from the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment, Malaysia. In the same year, Datuk Azizan was also awarded the Federal Territory Mal Hijrah Award. So, without further ado, I would like to invite Yang Bahagia Datuk Dr. Azizan Baharuddin to deliver her welcoming remarks and introduction to our speaker. Datuk, please welcome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ravshan. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Yang dihormati Dr. Hajah Yatela Zainal Abidin, Chief Executive Officer Yayasan Samdabi. Yang berbahagia Profesor Nizam Muhammad, Director of Institute for Climate Change, UKM. Yang berbahagia Profesor Engineer Dr. Muhammad Sobri Takrif, co-chairholder UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability. Our most honoured invited speaker, Dr. Iyad, research fellows, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to extend my deep gratitude to the Almighty for His blessings and for making it possible for us to organize this first talk in our series of Sustainability Talk Series 2021. Our talk today, as you know, is entitled Al-Mizan, Covenant for the Earth, which will be delivered by Dr. Iyad Abumoghli, who is Director, Faith for Earth, Strategy Engagement with Faith-Based Organizations, United Nations Environment Programme, Nairobi, Kenya. We're extremely honored, Dr. Iyad, for your presence today. Ladies and gentlemen, given the need to conform to the new norm, we are virtually gathered here today to share important insights from the Islamic perspective on the environment and to learn the regional and international climate actions that have been carried out by Dr. Iyad and his team at UNEP. I would also like to convey my heartiest congratulations to the UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability, Research Center for Sustainable Process Technology, as Dr. Ravshan mentioned, Faculty of Engineering and Built Environment, and the Institute for Climate Change for organizing today's talk. And we hope that this will not be the first and the last that Dr. Iyad will be with us, and we would like further follow-ups to the sharing that he has with us today. So our special thanks also goes to our distinguished and honored participants. Yeah, Dr. Rashan, I probably do not have the list in front of me, but I'm sure there are many members of UKM itself, other centers inside and outside of the country who are interested in the topic of our talk today. So thank you so much for your support and collaborations with us. Before we begin, let us just get to know some background information of the Institute for Climate Change, Universiti Kebangsaan Malaysia. The primary aim or primary objectives for the establishment of this institute are one, to improve teaching at the undergraduate and postgraduate level in the field of climate and climate change. Secondly, to develop and enhance the skills and capabilities of universities and countries in the field of climate science and climate change, meteorology, climatology, atmospheric and oceanographic science, impacts and adaptation research, and produce graduates with the Bachelor of Science, doctorate and postdoctorate capacity. The institute also aims to be an interdisciplinary research institute and conduct interdisciplinary cross-border research, focusing on climate variability, changes in ecosystems, interactions between human beings and nature, to be a center of reference for research in this area, and to become a depository for data and monitoring of all matters related to climate and climate change. And Dr. Iyad and dear colleagues, I have been working with the team in UKM for almost 1 year now, and I can vouch for the fact that the variety and the amount of research, the volume of research that they have done is indeed remarkable. And one of the functions of the chair, such as myself, is to help dissipate this information and knowledge, and more critically, to make society aware of what they can help with in terms of climate change. So the specialized knowledge is really promising and very important, but all of us have to think very hard how to actually implement this on the ground. And Dr. Iyad, I think, will lead us in this direction. And also this UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainability was launched by the Science, Technology and Innovation Minister on the 11th of March of this year. It combines the UKM-YSD Chair for Sustainable Development, Zero Waste Technology, and the Chair for Climate Change. And it is envisioned that this combined chair will focus on the direct participation of the community, as we've said, and most critically the industry, to tackle sustainability challenges, especially SDG goal number 1, number 4, number 7, number 9, number 12, number 13, which is to look at poverty, education, affordable clean energy, industry, innovation, infrastructure, responsible consumption, production, and of course, most critically, climate change itself. So the sustainability initiatives are to be based on multidisciplinary and multi-organizational approach, as we've said, and the chair will leverage on existing as well as foster new smart partnerships with local and international collaborators. So those of you who are with us this afternoon, please look each other up and let's work together to impact more on initiatives towards mitigating climate change. So the chair also focuses on 3 pillars of action, namely climate change, community, industry, and smart circular solutions. The climate change pillar will focus on initiatives for climate change adaptation, mitigation strategies, whilst empowering everyone, especially the community in the field, for climate resilience. Finally, I would like also to take this opportunity to announce upcoming events organized and supported by the chair. These are, number 1, the 4th International Conference on Science and Technology Applications in Climate Change, which will be held on the 1st and 2nd of July this year. The second is our second Sustainability Talk Series, featuring Professor Xu Yi Wu from Feng Chia University. This is to be on the 28th of July, 2021. And thirdly, the 16th Asian Biohydrogen and Biorefinery Symposium and Sustainability Challenge, which will be held from the 15th to the 17th of December in 2021. So I hope you will be able to receive our continuous information, and should you need some more, you please email us and contact us. So without further ado, it is our great pleasure now to introduce our speaker. Dr. Iyad Abumoghli is founder and director of the Faith for Earth Initiative, as we said earlier. He has more than 35 years of experience with international organizations, the private sector, and also the scientific institutions. Dr. Abumoghli's expertise focuses on strategic planning. We need a lot of that, Dr. Iyad. Sustainable development, natural resources management, knowledge and innovation, and most critically, interfaith collaboration. 80% of the world population say that they are religious. So what about their religiosity? So let's work something out. Dr. Abumoghli is currently the lead principal advisor on engaging with faith-based organizations at UNEP. And previously, Dr. Abumoghli also held several leading positions, including the directorship and regional representative of UNEP in West Asia, Director of Knowledge and Innovation at UNDP's Regional Office for the Arab States, Senior Environment Advisor at UNDP's Sub-Regional Resource Facility in Beirut, Global Practice Manager for the Energy and Environment Group in New York, as well as Assistant Resident Representative of UNDP in Jordan. So Dr. Abumoghli holds a doctorate degree in biochemical engineering from University of Bath in United Kingdom, and is an outstanding graduate of the Virtual Development Academy, John's University. So Dr. Rashan, I hand over the mic to you now.
Thank you very much, Datuk Alizan. So ladies and gentlemen, now it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Iyad Abumoghli to deliver his lecture. Dr. Iyad, please welcome. The floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Good morning, good afternoon, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. First of all, thank you, Dr. Raushan, and thank you, Dr. Azizan, for the introduction. And thanks to the National University of Malaysia, to the Chair of Sustainability, and to the Institute of Climate Change, and to the many others who have been part of this. I'm very much impressed with the activities and work that you have been doing over the years and planning to do. This is really, really very pleasant and very encouraging to see such a distinguished group of people engaging in religion and development in general. And this is exactly what we have been focusing on for the past few years, to integrate the international community work on environmental issues with the work of religious institutions and religious leaders. So I'm very honored and delighted to be with you today, and my wholehearted greetings to the almost 100 participants who are with us online today, and many others who are watching this series. Greetings to all of you, and I hope that today we will shed some light. We're not gonna go into the details because the covenant is much, much bigger, and it's an effort that has started more than a year ago with distinguished group of people. But today we will be scratching the surface of it, and we will be presenting its intentions and what we are trying to achieve. So without further ado, let me start sharing my presentation, and I hope you can see it. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, yes.
All right. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I am going to introduce how the Al-Mizan, the Covenant for the Earth, emerged and what are the consequences and background and circumstances and why it is needed. We know now for sure that the planet is facing a triple planetary crisis. Represented by climate change, ecosystem destruction, and pollution and waste issues. We have been seeing more floods and sandstorms and increase of sea level and hurricanes and extreme weather conditions everywhere, not only in developing countries, but developed countries are also seeing the same. Now, as related to ecosystem destruction or degradation, the science is telling us that we are facing the risk of the extinction of 1 million species of biodiversity by the end of the century. So this is very much threatening. We have 7.8 million species of biodiversity, and if we are facing the threat of the extinction of 1 million of them, that is substantive. And of course, biodiversity resources constitute what we eat and how we live and with what we live and everything that is around us. Science is also telling us that 60% or 66% of the marine ecosystems are degraded or damaged, and you know, many nations depend on oceans for their diets and for their food systems and so on. Many millions of hectares have been changed for their uses. Forests have been cut to accommodate for agricultural purposes, and just a few days ago I have given a keynote address for the Food Systems Summit, where I have highlighted that, you know, we, with what we have, the population that we have today, almost 7.6 billion people, and increasing, we will be facing a food crisis that we cannot accommodate except either of destroying more forests to make lands for agriculture, or by changing our habits and consuming considerably less, but smartly to keep the healthy and nutritious diet that we need. Of course, climate change has been the focus and the attention of the international community. We are seeing the degradation of lands due to increase of temperature and droughts everywhere. We are seeing the ice areas or the icy areas being changed completely, and the disappearance of some glaciers. Actually, Iceland has bid farewell for the last glacier of its type in Iceland a few months ago, that existed for centuries and now has disappeared because of climate change. And we are seeing for the past decade, it has been the hottest decade ever recorded in history. So all of these are signs of climate change. And climate change is not only increase in temperature or increase in sea level rise, but it is affecting the sustainable livelihoods of the people, and also other creations and creatures living with us and on our shared planet. Pollution is also the third and important part of the planetary crisis that we are facing. And we, by 2050, we will find more plastic in the ocean than fish. And we are wasting more than 40% of the food that we consume. And even in some cases, it's up to 30% of the food is wasted even before it gets to our tables to eat. Yet there are 1 in 9 people sleep hungry every night. So there is an imbalance of the availability of food resources and the need for such food, and the people who are hungry and go to bed without a meal. All of this is also exacerbated by what we are facing today, the zoonotic diseases, the COVID-19 crisis that we are facing. And that is amplifying the challenges that we are facing. Already climate change, already droughts, already extreme weather conditions are impacting the socioeconomic status of the world. But in addition to that, we are facing COVID-19 that has impacted the economy, the social structure, the political systems, and trade among nations, and has at least closed airports, changed economic systems, and we hope that there will be a hope at the end of the tunnel, but it doesn't go without concerted global efforts. Why have we reached to this stage, and what are the underlying causes? As I mentioned, there is an increase in population that is unprecedented over the many centuries. And within only 200 years, we have gone up from 1 billion to 7.8 billion. And we are expected to increase to almost 10 billion by 2050. And that is causing tremendous pressure and strain and stress on natural resources. Again, all of these people would need lands, would need houses to live, therefore urbanization. And currently, or by 2030, we will be more than 70% of the people on Earth living in urban areas, in cities rather than in rural areas and away from cities. Yet poverty and inequality is still facing humanity. Industrialization, as much as it is needed and has provided us with the development and the living standards that we are, or some of us are privileged to have, but it is again, because it is based on wrong sources of energy, on fossil fuel, on gas and oil resources that are causing the increase of gases, greenhouse gases, and causing all of the climate change consequences. Now, understanding all of these challenges, the international community, represented by member states of the UN, more than 194 countries, met in 2015 and adopted the Sustainable Development Goals, which aim to provide healthy people to live in a healthy planet and enjoy prosperity in peace and in partnership. And the 17 development goals, for the first time, were thought of as an integrated manner, rather than as the Millennium Development Goals, where they were focused and they caused, separation between the intentions of getting to a more prosperous societies at the expense of the environment. So the integrated approach is very much in the thinking of the Sustainable Development Goals. However, these goals, the ambitious goals, and after now 5 years of its adoption and the beginning of its implementation, we have seen that we are not there yet. We are not on track. And it is not only the responsibility of nations or governments, it is the responsibility of all stakeholders, including civil society, the private sector, communities, faith-based organizations, and so on. Now, when we looked at, when we started the SDGs implementation and looked at who are active actually in the SDG domain, and we found that the faith-based organizations, although have been providing much needed support to local communities and even at the global level and engaging in providing socioeconomic support, they have not been integrated into the sustainability work stream and not aligned with the sustainable development goals. Now, that being said, we wanted to have the approach to implementing the Sustainable Development Goals and Agenda 2030 in an unprecedented way, because we are facing unprecedented challenges. So we need to get away from our own thinking process and streams and so on. Now, we have, as you know, we have come into the fourth industrial revolution, which is based on the cyber physical systems and Internet of Things and the artificial intelligence, and taking everything into technologically being activated or based and so on. However, what we are saying in our program, the Faith for Earth program, we're saying we actually need a different type of a revolution. We need a transformative behavioral revolution that takes us from the unsustainable consumption and production patterns into more ethical and inclusive way of dealing with our resources and living on the only planet that we have. So the ethical approach, the behavioral, the values, the standards of our behavior need to change. And this is why we said it is important to include or integrate the moral aspects and spiritual responsibilities into the work of sustainability and working on sustainable development. Because science alone, even if you have the best scientific methodology or technology, will not deter you from cutting a tree or destroying a land or throwing your waste and polluting the environment. So we need to transition or to transform into a ethically based behavioral societies. And this is why we have focused on religions and spiritual beliefs, because we believe that all religions of the world have a set of standards, a system of values that manages and controls and leads behavior. In addition, that we looked at the spectrum that is out there of faith organizations or faithful people. And the research says that more than 84% of the people associate themselves to a religion or to belief. So they have a basic set of behavioral or behaviors that govern their attitudes and the way they live. Wherever you go around the planet, you will find faith leaders in every corner of the world. You will find a mosque or a church or a temple, and accordingly you will find a faith leader, an imam, a priest or a rabbi or a monk being respected by the local communities and providing the spiritual guidance for the people. And as I mentioned, religions do form our behaviors and our lifestyles and how we deal with our surroundings and with the resources that we have. This is in principle, this is what the religions, but how about our practices? Do we actually know exactly what our religions are saying, how they are leading us? What are the basic standards of living and behavior we have been taught by religions. Do we conform and comply with them? So in addition to the spiritual values, religious institutions and organizations are economically powerful. They are the fourth largest economic power on earth, and they have been providing support to educational systems, to health coverage, and so on. More than 50% of schools actually at the global level are owned by faith-based organizations. More than 50% of healthcare systems are owned by faith organizations. In addition, the asset that they own is more than 8% of habitable land, earth on the planet. They own more than 5% of commercial forests. And in the US alone, over the past 10 years, the increase in investment of faith-based organizations has risen to 3,400% in providing developmental support to communities. In addition to that, there are millions and millions of houses of worship that are considered actually as constructions or buildings that require the adoption of sustainable building practices and so on. So in addition to the spiritual power, there is an economic power that we need to tap into and work with faith organizations to manage sustainably. Therefore, in 2017, we have established the Faith for Earth Coalition or initiative with a vision that we need to work with the faith organizations by mutually inspiring one another and engaging them in policy dialogue with the global environmental governance system, as well as in contributing to the Agenda 2030 and the SDGs. Our vision is we need to get to a world where all creations live in balance. And this is, just underline the word balance because it appears everywhere. Now, to do so, we have come up with a strategy, a corporate global strategy with three main goals. The first one is to engage with faith leaders and faith organizations in policy dialogue. The other one, the second objective is to work with the investment part of the organizations to green their investments, green their mosques, their churches, green their investments, because how do they generate this wealth is by investing. And we have seen a global movement for divestment from the use of oil and gas. And third, which is important as well, is to link the science and policy to the faith teachings and spiritual scriptures. We need the science to meet with the theologians, with the scholars, and so on, and have mutual benefits of the availability of the evidence, scientific evidence, to support the spiritual teachings. But as well, we need the science to base their science and research on ethical approaches and so on. So what is our aim? What are the outcomes that we are aiming to achieve? First of all, we need to create a global coalition, the Faith for Earth Coalition, and we have started. So we have now many organizations have started joining us. And this coalition would be consisted of four important councils. The first one is the Council of Eminent Faith Leaders, the highest faith leaders from all religions, to come together on regular basis and to convey coherent messages that are united with nature and our relationship with our natural resources. The second council is the Council of Youth, and we know that more than 70% at the global level, it is the youth who have the power and the enthusiasm and are already leading our future. So it is important to engage them in the implementation, but also in the leadership we are hoping to have. And we need to bring those faith-based organizations at the CEO level, because they are already engaged on the ground with projects that provide support. So we need those projects and those organizations to work on sustainable principles. And as I mentioned, to create a consortium between scientists and religious scholars to bridge the understanding between science and religion. In addition to what I mentioned in greening the assets of the faith-based organization. So this is a diagram that shows the interlinkages between the different councils, where we are hoping that the Council of Eminent Faith Leaders would present and provide the wisdom, the spiritual leadership, the global outreach and so on, that will be adopted by the young people for on the ground implementation and so forth, and in the interaction between the councils. Now, at the policy level, it is very important that we don't only work with NGOs or people on the ground. We need to integrate those principles at the policy level. This is why the Faith for Earth initiative has worked on integrating, working with religious leaders and faith organizations into the midterm strategy of the United Nations Environment Assembly. So it became as part and parcel of the implementation strategy of the work of the United Nations Environment Program for the next 5 years. So this is a very important achievement. We have also worked with other important intergovernmental work like the G20, like the conventions on climate change, on biodiversity, and so on and so forth. And this brings in the Al-Mizan Covenant for the Earth as an institutional setup for the integration of religious values into the work on environmental issues. So what religions have done so far? Dr. Raushan and Dr. Azizan have mentioned that the different religions have come up with declarations on climate change in the past 5 or 7 years and so on. Some organizations are launching some campaigns to fight climate change and to restore ecosystems and so on. So, and they have participated in the meetings. The last one we had last October into 2020, where more than 450 faith leaders came together and adopted our sacred commitment to working on nature-based solutions and integrating religions into the environmental governance. And of course, you probably know that Dr. Azizan and many others have worked on green guidelines for Hajj, for pilgrimage, for different things. However, institutionally, there has been only one organization or one group that has been the leader so far in terms of environmental governance, and that is Pope Francis and the Catholic Church, where in 2015, Pope Francis came up with Laudato Si, which is a letter to the international community on the responsibility of Christians or Catholics towards the environment. So the Laudato Si described what is happening at the global level, facing our common home, the planet, and then talked about how the creation is reflected in the Bible, and came up with a strategic approach, which is called the integral ecology, where humans need to live in harmony with the creation. So, and that has created a great momentum with the Christian community, but has left other religions not with a parallel system that works actually in mobilizing its own people. And looking at the spectrum of religions, Muslims constitute almost 25% of the global population. There are around 2 billion Muslims who have one set of standards that is common to all Muslims all over the world. So Muslims can easily have a covenant or a charter that leads their behavior towards Earth and the planet. Also, we're thinking about working with the Hindus as well. There are 1 billion Hindus out there. So we're working with Hindu institutions for another type of charter. But for Muslims, as I mentioned, there has not been institutional setup. However, some institutions have in the past considered working on environmental issues. For example, the first session of the Islamic conference that was held in Saudi Arabia in 2002 came up with a general framework on sustainable development. And it was until 2019 where the Council of Islamic Ministers for the Environment met in Rabat and discussed a strategy for the activation of the role of culture and religions in protecting the environment. There has been some networks created and some guidelines proposed and so on. And as I mentioned, the declaration on climate change that was issued in 2015, leading to the Paris Agreement and so on. However, there was, as I mentioned, no systemic, no comprehensive charter or covenant that brings Muslims together. And this is why during the Rabat meeting of the Council of Ministers, a group of organizations, including the ISISCO, the Islamic Organization for Culture, Education and Scientific Organizations, the Islamic Environmental Sustainability and Sciences Organization, Skudar University, and many others came together and agreed on the principle of the need for a covenant that governs Muslims' contributions to environment. And what is more relevant than everything being created in balance, as mentioned in Surah Ar-Rahman in the Holy Quran, where God says, God set up the balance, which Al-Mizan, so that you may not exceed the balance. Weigh with justice and do not fall short in the balance. God, has spread out the earth for all living creatures. So it was not only created for humans, but also created for all living creatures. And subhanallah, this Surah Al-Rahman, if you read it carefully, you will see that God has mentioned almost everything. You almost mentioned the creations, the type of biodiversity, the earth and heavens. Subhanallah, this is a surah that I love very much. Now, what are the basic principles for coming up with a covenant? Of course, the basic thing or the basic element is Al-Quran Kareem, the Holy Quran. But also in Islam, there are the practices of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and his hadith, his sayings, but also Islamic studies over the past 14 centuries and Al-Sharia Al-Islamiyya, where our laws are extracted. So we have formed a core team of Al-Mizan, constituted of the organizations that I have mentioned, the College of Islamic Studies of Qatar, the Qatar Quranic Garden, ISISCO, UNEP, Islamic Foundation for Ecology, Skudar University, IFES, and so on. And these are the distinguished eminent members of the core team that provides the operational support for the covenant. However, the most important part is actually the scholars team, where we have the privilege, the honor, the delight to work with a group of highly eminent scholars from around the world, from Asia and Malaysia and Indonesia to United States, to Europe, to Africa, everywhere in Asia. And we have tried to cover almost all sects of Islam. We cannot be very comprehensive, but we have tried our best to be inclusive in including those eminent scholars. And we are very delighted and honored to have Dr. Azizan as part of this team. Now, the content of the covenant, Al-Mizan, is, first of all, we need to show the world that we understand what is happening. We understand the economic situation. We understand the destruction of ecosystems. We understand the challenges of climate change. We understand the population growth, the economic degradation, and so on. So the first chapter is putting an understanding statement of what to come in the following chapters, talking about the responsibility of Muslims and how Islam has addressed all of these issues. So the second chapter is what are the signs of what's happening and the relationship between humans and their creation. The following is working our best towards achieving a healthy planet. The fourth is how we relate the economy, the justice, the inequalities, and so on. And the final chapter is how we are requested to conserve and do things and take actions to protect the creation. So the first one, as I mentioned, what we talked about, the planetary crises and so on. But then relating to the creation and how God created Earth and all of its creatures and creations. The principle of at-tawheed, for example, the unionness of everything that God has created, which shows that we are part of a whole. Humans are only one species out of the 7.8 million species that are out there. The principle of equilibrium and reciprocity, which is presented by the principle of Al-Mizan, that God created everything is in balance. And the principle of the communities, وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. God created nations and people and tribes to meet and to work together and to support one another, not only as humans, but also He created communities of other creatures and creations that live with us. And then it talks about the responsibility, our responsibility of stewarding the earth. Al-Khulafa, Khalifa. God, it is who has made you stewards on the earth. So we are responsible before God in the judgment day of what we have done on earth. And then the principle of walking gently on earth. We are the servants of God, the All-Merciful, and we have been commanded by God to walk gently on earth. Now, the section talking about caring, which is implementing and adopting the Islamic principles of at-taqwa, and which is the reverence, the care, the carefulness of not only our neighbors and our families and human beings, but also the care for the creation as a whole. And the principle of al-ihsan. When you talk about ihsan, not only the charity, but also the giving to all the surroundings. God, he who created death and life to try you, which of you work the most good. And then al-rahma. When you say the word of ar-rahma, you feel the compassion with everything that is around you. You are not only compassionate to your fellow human being, but you're compassionate towards your creation, the entire surroundings, and so on. And in all of that, we have had an exemplar, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and we have not sent thee but as a mercy to all beings. And also other practices, including the spiritual and ethical values like al-shahada, nashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammad Rasulullah, as-salah, where our practices actually, or when we pray, it prevents us from doing bad and tells us to do good. Zakah is not only zakah for the people, but it is zakah for nature as well. And we have seen the green zakah approaches where some of the resources of a zakah are being used for greening nature and providing environmental sustainability to the world. Of course, the practices of al-hajj and the fasting, all of those are behaviors that control or direct our relationship with God's creations. And then sharing how we are facing an economic challenge that is not positive. It is causing degradation in the social life. It is causing inequality. It is causing the destruction of the environment and so on. So the economic principles, the equity, the fairness, the justice are all principles in the Holy Quran and the Islamic covenant. Do not waste by excess. God does not love those who waste by excess. So we are demanded to deal with the pollution and waste crisis in the Holy Quran, very clear. And then the lifestyles, which actually command our way of living with nature and natural resources. We have been created as ummatan wasata, a moderate nation, even in our dealings with other nations around us, but also ummatan wasata in the harmony and balance of living with the creations. Truly, God does not change the conditions of a people until they change what's in themselves. لا يغير الله ما بقوم حتى يغيروا ما بأنفسهم. We cannot. We have to change our behavior so we change our relationship. And of course, it talks about economic systems like al-riba. The al-riba is not only asking for more money or interest on your financial resources, but also the exploitation of resources versus the fair economy. And of course, the shura, the principle of consulting, you cannot, and that cuts across, for example, the environmental impact assessment. You cannot construct an industry or build something without consulting with the local communities. So these are the principles of the Islamic principles that cut across the international principles. And finally, we need to tend earth. We need to take care of earth. And the covenant mentions examples of conservation activities that have been part of Islamic practices like al-hima, where trees are conserved, where animals or hunting and fishing are regulated, even buildings during in some areas are prevented, and so on. Also the awqaf, waqf, al-tayyib wal-halal, from everything that is surrounding us, and so on. So many concepts are being discussed and reflected in the covenants. And of course, that is all not for people only, but also for the welfare of the animals, the welfare of other creations and natural resources around us. And then the covenant ends by a list of actions that the Muslims are calling to adopt. So what are the actions or call to action? And I'll mention them probably briefly, but in general. For example, we need educational system that adopts Islamic principles on environment. You might have, the School of Environmental Studies in a university or two, but that is not a principle that is integrated across our educational system. And even when it does, it's a small course here and there. So we need a Al-Mizan Academy where we come up with the Islamic perspectives on environmental issues to be taught in courses, online courses, and so on and so forth. We also need to enhance activism in Islam. Unfortunately, Islam or Muslims, current Muslims, they believe in the charity work. If you have some resources, you go give some financial resources. This is in general. I'm not generalizing, but this is in general. But the work on environmental issues is not really what we want, as compared to the Christian organizations, for example, or other type of religions where they have international organizations, local organizations, legal, regional organizations on environment, working to mobilize the masses of the people towards restoring nature and fighting climate change. So we need to create organizations within the Islamic countries to work on environmental issues. Now, we need to, as we are working on the Decade of Action for SDGs, we have launched the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. We have the Biodiversity 10-year framework. So we need to be working alongside of these international agendas where we contribute, but also we drive those agendas as we wish in terms of Islamic perspective. So we have a window of opportunity that is globally open and very important for all of us. As I mentioned, young people, young Muslims are very important to be engaged. So we want to create a council where we mobilize the energy, the enthusiasm, the power of young people, young Muslim people, to bring to forefront of being leader in environmental work based on environmental and Islamic principles. All of that would need to be appreciated and acknowledged. So encourage the global community by assigning them or awarding them global awards, and that would encourage important organizations to come to the forefront and become leaders and champions of the word on environmental and Islamic teachings. That, of course, cannot work without important financial contributions. So there is a need to create the Al-Mizan Trust Fund, where Muslims, as part of their zakah, their contributions, their charity work, but also of their interest to support environmental work based on Islamic principles. So a trust fund is needed to be created. The knowledge component is very important, where we want a sort of a one-stop shop, one platform, websites to be created, blogs to be written, connecting people, Muslims in Malaysia to Muslims in the US and Africa and so on, where they can exchange lessons learned and success stories and work together. So creating this technology-based networks and platforms is very important. And of course, we need to raise awareness and celebrate action and bring in attention and keep bringing attention on annual basis by creating what we call Al-Mizan International Day, where all Muslims come together and celebrate their achievements on environmental issues. Now, that needs to be adopted by institutions and Islamic institutions. So we need to bring in Islamic institutions to debate Islamic principles and maybe to come up with extract new rules and fatwas and what have you in terms of how Islam is related to nature and natural resources, and to come up with strategies that are supportive of the work of Muslims on environmental issues. And certainly we need to be minarets for responsible sustainability and so on. For example, our own houses of worship, where we go and seek refuge with God and spiritual guidance, we need them to be minarets, models for sustainability. So they employ solar systems, reduce water waste, green around them, not only the premises of the mosque, but also the local communities around them. So what are the next steps for the covenant? Certainly the work of the scholars is very important. However, we need that to be adopted by Muslim communities everywhere. So we will be sharing the draft, which is almost ready, with more than 300 Islamic institutions around the world to get their feedback and review and to contribute to its strengthening. And then we're organizing a scholars conference where scholars from around the world will come and meet, hopefully not before the end of this year, and discuss the covenant and discuss the way forward. And then submit the covenant for the Islamic Council of Ministers for adoption. So it becomes guiding principles for all Muslims everywhere in all Islamic countries, but also we hope that other religions feel inspired and feel and find the value in it. It will be submitted, inshallah, to the United Nations Environment Assembly in February of 2022, where we will be bringing the attention of to the covenant to the international community, where thousands and thousands of policymakers meet on a biannual basis, and then generate advocacy, which is important. Everybody has to adopt the covenant as the charter of life when dealing with environment and nature. So thank you very much. This is what I had to say this morning, and I hope that was somehow inspiring for action and to take us to the next level of our engagement with our natural and environmental resources. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad. It was a very informative, factful, and enlightening speech and presentations. Personally, I'm sure everybody, all of us have learned a lot from your presentation, but personally, I have learned a lot, especially on the interlinkages between science and various faith, the religions, human and society, economy and nature, the way you have brought those relationships, and then the responsibility of religious community, societal community, and also on the preserving our environment, preserving the earth where we are living, and also the non-living and living creatures, the religious perspective, and also the Islamic perspective. So that is excellent. So now I think I would like to also open the floor for Q&A. So please raise your questions or feel free to intervene by any of these three options. First, you can directly, intervene online, just speak up or raise your hand, by using the reaction button at the right end of your Zoom link. Or you can also just write your Q&A or questions on Zoom chat box, or also we'll also follow the Facebook Q&A questions. So with this, please also, before raise your questions, please introduce yourself with your name and organization. And also, if you are not from Malaysia, just please let us know your resident countries. So please feel free to now, please raise and feel free to raise your questions. I open the floor for Q&A. Okay,
Yes,
I
okay.
can see the Ibrahim, please go ahead.
Yes, good afternoon from Istanbul. Assalamu alaikum. It was very, great opportunity to listen to Dr. Iyad, or colleague or friend, and also good afternoon to Professor Azizan, who just give this opportunity to Iyad to make our voices heard in Malaysia and also over the internet. And I think, as Iyad put very well, thank you, Dr. Iyad. And this is a wake-up call for Muslims. Wherever we go on the globe, there are strong environmental, NGOs and consciousness, and religious people. They engage with the environment, they care for the environment. But it is, we Muslim was, a little bit, at the back seat. So Iyad made a great effort to just include us, to bring us together, and to just make our voice heard. And this is why I call this is a wake-up call for Ummah. We have to care for Mizan of the Mizan. It is created by Allah. This system is created by Allah, sustained by Allah. But as a Khalifa, it is our responsibility to protect it, to care for the environment, and and I really appreciate our colleagues and Azizan and also Iyad and Fazlun Khalid and others, and all who has concerns for environment. They will be remembered in the future as a good ancestors who care for future generations, who care for the seas, who care for the animals, who care for everything. I just want to thank Dr. Iyad and also Dr. Azizan, and also send my heartfelt salams to my brothers and sisters in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ibrahim. We accept your salam and then thank you. Very fruitful. Dr. Iyad, do you like to say anything?
No, thank you. I mean, Dr. Ibrahim, as a member of the core team, also member of the scholars team, he has been very effective and very inspiring to all of us. We have enjoyed a long time relationship since the creation of the Faith for Earth and the discussions. And Dr. Ibrahim, with all the scholars team, have contributed to creating a legacy that will live hopefully for centuries to come. This scholars team will be known as the first scholars team who have translated Al-Quran Al-Kareem into action in an era which have been seeing tremendous challenges. So Dr. Ibrahim, Dr. Azizan, and all the scholars team and core team have been creating something that will live, inshallah, for a long, long time.
Thank you very much. Datu Azizan, yes, please go ahead.
Yes. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dr. Iyad, thank you very much and congratulations. I think you in half an hour, 40 minutes, you brought 79 pages of the content of Mizan to the attention of so many of us here. Alhamdulillah. Shukran. My urgent concern, and I'd like to share this concern with my colleagues at UKM, at the chair, especially Professor Muhammad Nizam, who is with us now, who is director of the Institute for Climate Change, is how do we bridge the gap between the scholars' opinion, the scientific opinion regarding climate change and care for the environment with the religious leaders, who I think is high time should be looked upon as important partners in the dissemination of what we need to disseminate. For example, that I think there is an urgent need for the fatwa committees of Muslim communities all over the world to include the issue of ecocide, the issue of doing injustice to nature in their curriculum. The earlier the better, but we don't seem to be able to have much effort yet in that direction. And I know Dr. Fazlun and our Dr. Fakaruddin Indonesia, they've done courses with imams, for example. But I'm hoping that UNEP, Dr. Iyad, yourself and your team at the United Nations, you could throw light on how we could do this with a greater impetus. And I hope our colleagues in Malaysia here, Professor Nizam and Professor Sabri and all the other wonderful colleagues at the Institute, Dr. Rashan, that we can do more in terms of interacting with the so-called religious scholars, with the so-called religious teachers down there. So I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Azizan. Dr. Iyad, do you like to comment?
Thank you very much, Dr. Azizan, for bringing this important subject. And indeed, we will not be able to move forward without having the educational institutions working, not only education, but also scientific institutions, the research and development and so on, the specialized institutions come along with the religious teachings. And this is, as I mentioned, this is why we're creating this consortium between scientists and religious leaders. And I have been sending invitations to educational institutions to become members of the consortium, of the Faith for Earth consortium. And I have had received numerous requests from global institutions, but unfortunately not yet from Islamic institutions. So I urge you just to send me a letter and requesting to be members of this consortium. And then later, hopefully this year, we will convene a workshop to discuss how to proceed, how to bridge that gap that you are talking about, and what are the needed actions. How can the science support religions, and how can religions be integrated in the scientific facts? And so all of those who are attending today, representing scientific institutions, please communicate with me and we will work on including you in this consortium. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dr. Iyad. There is one question on chat box. Allow me to read that. So, is there any example from the glorious era of Islam, particularly the Umayyad, Abbasiyya, and Uthmaniyya, on how they implement ethical and spiritual responsibility to take care of the natural resources, climate change, and sustainability issues? Maybe some of them can be adopted to this covenant. So this question raised from Siti Hajar, University Kebangsaan, Malaysia.
If of course, I will leave also, ask Dr. Azizan and Dr. Ibrahim to answer if they wish to do so. But from my humbled background information about this, let's start by the era where Prophet Muhammad himself, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, established Al-Hima. Al-Hima is a concept that governs the relationship between humans and nature. And it had around 5 principles. Al-Hima, where hunting is regulated during seasons, where even, Prophet Muhammad, who was, illiterate, knew that there are seasons of the year where animals would need to repopulate and increase. So Al-Hima system prevented hunting during those seasons. Second, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also around Mecca and Medina created zones where uprooting of trees is forbidden. Digging anything around that land is forbidden because of the regeneration requirements of nature. But also in other eras where even, and of course, Dr. Ibrahim knows that, when in the mountains of the Islamic Empire, it used to snow, Muslims used to go and throw seeds for birds to eat, because, you know, when the snow covers the trees and lands, birds might die and so on. You know, so many other examples of how we deal with our surroundings. Prophet Muhammad said when he saw one of the Sahabas, doing al-wudu, and he told him, conserve water even if you were on a running river. So all these examples across the centuries that, you know, the Islamic Empire has been there, convey some good learning examples. And we have in the covenant mentioned a great deal of them, but this is exactly what I am saying. Even after the adoption of the covenant, we need to go into details. What are the nature-based solutions that Islam has been providing? What are issues related to water resources management? What are issues related to the forest management? And of course, we know that in Southeast Asia and Malaysia and Indonesia, Islamic fatwas have been issued to prevent burning of forest fires and to encourage conservation. So even in our current period, there are Islamic teachings that we can learn from. So I'm not sure if Dr. Ibrahim or Dr. Azizan would to contribute also. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You summarized very well. I just made a study on the subject. Let's just, you know, suffice what Iyad said about the history in the day of the Prophet. That the Prophet's environmentalism set an example for the Muslim Ummah. I just studied the, you know, Western travelers, diaries. When they visited the Ottoman Empire, Istanbul and Egypt in 18th and 19th centuries, they have a very good, eyewitness observation of Muslims' perception of animals and perception of environment. You know, just let me give you one example. One is the famous French poet and diplomat, Alphonse Lamartine, who made a pilgrimage from Marseille to Jerusalem, you know, in 1833. He stayed in Istanbul for a while. And he wrote in his diary that, quote, Muslims have good relation with all creatures, animate and inanimate. Trees, birds, dogs, in short, they respect all the things God has created. They extend their compassion and kindness to all the species of fresh animals which in our countries are abandoned or ill-treated. In all the cities of Istanbul, there is specific intervals. They leave bowls of water for dogs of the district. Some Muslim found pious foundations at their deaths for pigeons they have fed throughout their lives, thus ensuring that grain will be scattered for the birds after they have departed. As Iyad said, you know, it was a practice in Egypt, in Istanbul, in Damascus, in Isfahan, because it was a sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam to care for the rest of the creation because they have been created by Allah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ibrahim. Datul Azizan, do you like to add some more or we proceed to?
I think we'll invite other colleagues first.
Okay, thank
Professor
you.
Nizam, I think, is more than anxious to ask something. Professor Nizam is the director of the Institute for Climate Change. And it is marvelous work Dr. Iyad done on climate change science. So we are actually crying in our hearts. How do we bring this wonderful knowledge to the community and especially to the religious minded so that, as we all know, it's the religion that compels someone to change his behavior towards nature. So many of us in Malaysia, scientists, policymakers, layperson, consumers, we're all Muslims, but how come we are not able to effect change? What's the problem? So I think this is the most crucial idea that we have to get across. And I'd like very much also for Dr. Iyad to explain a little bit more on how do we join the consortium. When we join the consortium, what would we expect to be able or to have to do in order to make things work? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Azizan. I think the researchers community and Institute of Climate Change, the director itself also, we may look to write a proposal. I think this is very crucial time to find a research grant on this, the religions, and then especially on the Islamic and other religions and their, how those interlinkages with the environmental climate change and sustainability, the impacts, how we can, so that is as I think Mr. Ibrahim said, it's like wake up call for us, your presentation, it is really excellent. So let's move to the second question we have on the chat box, how to be part of Mizan community. This question raised by Engineer Nurul Huda. And I think you have given some of the information on the chat box, the link on the updates of Al-Mizan. But I have also a little bit similar questions as a layman because I did not explore this area too much, but I personally worked a lot on climate change, economics and policy aspects. And also I am coordinating lead author for IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, together with the UNFCCC. So that's like the scientific committee I'm working, but IPCC also does lack of literature on the religious beliefs on the climate change issues. That is currently we are facing at IPCC. So my question also is there any how we can be part of Mizan Academy, as you mentioned, whether we have to register or whether there is a fees or how we can be. That's similar to the Nurul's question. Thank you, Dr. Iyad.
Thank you very much for these questions and for the interest. The link that I have put in the chat is to register to receive updates from the Faith for Earth initiative, which keeps talking about Al-Mizan. Now, as I mentioned, we are working on the draft of Al-Mizan that we are hoping to be adopted, and we are proposing these actions to be taken. Now, those actions need to be adopted by institutions. So we don't have them yet. So we don't have an academy for Al-Mizan. We don't have a network for Al-Mizan and so on. So hopefully the scholars meeting that we are hoping to have by the end of this year will bring in interested people that will adopt or hopefully adopt such actions and create the academy, create the network and create the platform and so on. Then it will be open to everybody. But for currently, we can provide you with the information from the Faith for Earth initiative, and hopefully, inshallah, we will be working with the Islamic institutions. And I invite you, I mean, if there is a Malaysian institution that is existing here and would want to lead the creation of Al-Mizan Academy, or actually be the lead in providing the network for Muslims and so on. So this is an open invitation to everybody, not only to be members, but also to lead actions. And this is how we take things to the next level. Thank you.
Okay, I think thank you I hope that that question has been answered properly. Thank you. So there is one question on chat box as well. How do you see the Al-Mizan will impact towards sustainable development goals in recent years, let's say 5 to 10 years? This question raised by Hazlina from UKM.
This is an excellent question, and the whole purpose of creating Al-Mizan as well as Laudato Si that was created in 2015 is actually to contribute to solving global issues. For example, let's talk about the decade of ecosystem restoration. And the decade scientifically talks about ecosystem-based approaches, which is similar to the Islamic concepts of al-hima or of the principles of conserving lands during conflicts, for example. Muslims or Islam, Prophet Muhammad and all the Islamic leaders have asked their soldiers, for example, not to cut a tree, not to destroy a house of worship, not to kill, animals and so on. And these are now principles that are part of new policies of the international community on how to deal with nature during conflicts and wars. So we have those systems that we can propose and include in those guidelines, those policies, and be inspiring for action by other international bodies. We're talking, in the Quran, there are 57 species of biodiversity that are mentioned. Those can be used as an example how biodiversity is protected by religion. In Islam, even in the Quran, most of the titles of the chapters of the surahs in Islam are actually named after animals or creations and so on. For example, Al-Anfal, Al-Fil, Al-Naml, Al-Nahl, even, natural systems like earthquake, Zilzal, and many others, many of those of surah, the Holy Quran are actually named after God's creations and so on. So this is how we should take that importance of such a thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. You have one more question I can see. Is from Dr. Peer, UKM. Many people still believe in secularism. What is the strategy by Al-Mizan team to encounter them? Yeah, that is like one of your slide. We have seen the big number of people. So yes, that's a good question.
Thank you for this very important question. We're saying we're not separating Muslims from other believers of other religions, nor from secular beliefs or atheists. We are saying everybody has a role to play. And actually the covenant in its chapters talk about the one boat, the one ship, that we are all in one ship, that any hole in any part of the ship will drown the entire population of the ship. In the Holy Quran, for example, the story of Noah and the ark that God commanded Noah to build, and he asked him to put a pair of every living thing on the ship. So he did not tell him, no, I like the lions and I don't like the bees and so on, but he asked for everybody. So this is our inclusive approach to the issue. We need to be inclusive. And as I mentioned in my presentation, وَخَلَقْنَاكُمْ شُعُوبًا وَقَبَائِلَ لِتَعَارَفُوا. We created you tribes and nations to come together and to know one another. The Quran did not say we only created you as Muslims, only to live on this earth. So God created us as tribes and peoples from different backgrounds so we can work together. And this is the essence of inclusivity in the covenant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Iyad. There is a complimentary, I guess, and then just to inform you that we are interested to contribute in this development, especially on sustainability competencies. Educating young children, perhaps we'll receive more updates from time to time. I guess we have to visit also your link and then website, yeah, so we can get, yeah, great. And any other questions, please feel free to raise your hand on the reaction buttons or just directly jump in and then, ask your question, please. So Dr. Yeah, I was just thinking very, very interesting because as I'm coming from a strongly scientific background on climate change, but I would say one of the important slide on your presentation that you mentioned that ethical is one of the, ethical issues are one of the main aspects for moving forward to transformational behavior, especially if you brought the examples from industrial perspective and also the moral and ethical issues or maybe societal responsibility. I was just thinking, like myself as a Muslim and an Islamic community, what sort of factors or issues can be considered, for moving forward to this transformational behaviors? Because this is really important. As end of your presentation, you said we really have to act something. We have to respond that we have our responsibility in this art as a community, as a member of religious community, or as a member of the society, or as a member of this loved art. So that is like, could you please let us, enlighten us on this? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Roshan. This is a very important question, and I have written a paper on the role of ethics and values in galvanizing action towards environmental sustainability. And that was during the conference that we have held with the participation of thousands of people last October. The importance of, there is a science called environmental ethics, but there are the religious ethics, and there is a convergence between both of them. However, the spiritual ethics are not known in the environmental area. So this is how we need to bring the ethics of religions into environmental ethics. Now, let's talk about examples. The Holy Quran talks about what can we eat and what we cannot eat. So it commands our dietary system. In Hinduism, for example, or Buddhism, they also command what to eat and what to eat not. There are religions that are plant-based, so they forbid, for example, the killing of animals and the use of animals for eating. Each religion is approaching it from a different perspective. So in Islam, for example, the ethical approach to eating meat, for example, we know that there are standards for killing an animal for eating. So first of all, you cannot kill an animal unless you need it to eat. This is one. Second, it even gave standards for what type of animal you eat or you kill to eat. For example, those animals that eat other carnivores cannot be killed or cannot be eaten. So it is minimize the species that we have given by God to eat. And third, for example, that this animal needs to be at least 1 year old. So, the babies of the sheep or cannot be killed for eating. So there are ethical standards even in providing such creation or such rahmah from God to the well-being of the people. Again, concerning plants and trees and so on, the ethical approach of Islam, when Prophet Muhammad said, even when the doomsday comes and you have a plant in your hand, you are obliged to plant it even on that day. So this is the ethical approach of the religion and how we deal with our natural resources and the creation. And of course, there are so many other examples that we need, courses and courses of to come up with, a comprehensive dealing with them. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one more questions coming from the chat box from Muhammad Ali Hassan. I can read for you the question. Can you relate the topic today to Maqasid Sharia? Is protecting the environment part of Maqasid?
Definitely, and the covenant of Al-Mizan, I don't want to reveal everything there, but Maqasid al-Sharia is part and parcel of one of the chapters of the covenant. I cannot elaborate more on that. I don't have the proper knowledge, but also I don't want to reveal everything before we have finalized the draft. And hopefully, if you are interested to be part of the reviewers of the draft, please send me through the University of Malaysia your emails and names, and I will be delighted to share with you. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we're not talking about months and months. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, we will be sending the draft to all Muslim scholars who are interested to look at Al-Mizan and to contribute their knowledge into it. I am sure that our scholars, the team that is working on this, have discussed extensively all of these systems, including Al-Maqasid, including everything else. But definitely we will be honored to have more knowledge of our friends and colleagues from the Islamic institutions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Iyad. Mr. Muhammad Ali Hassan, maybe you might be sent an email to Dr. Iyad and then to get more information on that. Okay. And then any other questions, feel free to raise your hands or just jump in online. And then it is really a very, very, indeed, it's a very important topic. And as you said, it's really enlightening the academic and researchers, how they can play and they can fulfill this gap by doing, the robust and by doing the research and education. Okay, I can see one question, one hand raised by Shahira Taha. Please come in.
Hello, hi. Assalamualaikum. I'm Shahira, an assistant consultant for environmental firm. I'm new to the sustainability, but my question is, in terms of the environmental governance in the system, in the Al-Mizan, do you have provided some principle or maybe some guidelines in terms of polluter to pay? Pollute to pay means any punishments, any kind of, some, you have to counter back whatever you have done. That, is it clear? I don't know how to because I'm really new for this sustainability talks, but that's, I want to ask a question about is there any punishments or penalty, some sort of, okay, that's all. Thank you.
Dr. Iyad.
Thank you. This is a beautiful question. And well, the covenant is a strategic framework. And it talks about your responsibility as a Muslim. And it provides general direction of the responsibility of Muslims as Khalifas on the earth. And the practices that we are currently doing to degrade our systems and nature. However, the covenant is not a system that tells you exactly what to do. Okay, it gives you the concept of your being a Khalifa of Subhanallah on earth. So you have the responsibility. It talks about the economic growth that has led us to this state of affairs. But it does not tell you that you need to adopt this system. We are talking about, for example, the Islamic financial system, which is based on the value that it brings to the society, that it has to be positive and enhance the sustainable well-being of the Islamic society and all people living in this society. But it does not talk about the real principles of Islamic financing. So you might not find direct answers to such a very detailed question, but you will be find guidance on the system as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Iyad. So I don't see any more raised hand, but please feel free to come in. We have few more minutes to end the session. And as I said, we'll have a group photo session shortly. But as just like, Dr. Iyad's presentation was listening for it's about 1 hour, and the discussions, I just make a remarks on that. As you mentioned that we are really, we are facing unprecedented problems in terms of climate change, environmental problems and impacts. That is true. But at this time, as I can see that the unprecedented COVID-19 situation also are making us more, the human and nature more vulnerable than the past. So that is like, yes, we are in very, very unprecedented situation. We are passing on that, and not only in terms of environmental and this one, but in terms of, like this kind of infectious disease, which we never thought it will be lasted for more than 1 year, and it's going to be 2 years almost. So it's really, we're passing. So that's...
Dr. Roshan, can I just add a little bit of information?
Yes,
I think we'd like to humbly share with everyone, Dr. Iyad, the fact that our previous questioner, Prof. Muhammad Ali Hassan, he is with Angkasa, which is one of the industrial economic players in the country, and they have just launched, I think, or going to launch a Plant a Million Trees project with the Institute of Climate Change at UKM. So I think these are some of the practical on the ground which we have not had opportunity to share in this webinar, but perhaps in the future, Professor Nizam, I think we should share with Dr. Iyad and with the international sisterhood and brotherhood in these fights for arresting climate change. What we do, perhaps we can share with one another and we inspire one another. And if we go back to the objectives of the Earth Day for this year, I think much of what Dr. Iyad has been talking is part of those 5 pillars of what the world wants to do through the celebration of Earth Day in April, I think. Yeah, that's all I want to add. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Azijan. My apologies, sorry, Professor Datu Ali Hassan, I couldn't recognize you by your name, but thank you very much for your participation and also for your questions in this event. Thank you, we greatly appreciate that. Thank you, Datu. And is there any more questions? I don't see any questions on chat box or raise, and then there are a lot of compliments. So let's move. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, Dr. Iyad, for your nice presentation and also excellent elaboration and response to the questions and answers. We look forward to work with you in the future, definitely. Yeah, thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the end of our today's event. We'll now proceed to the photo session, definitely. But before that, I would like to announce again, to take this opportunity to announce our upcoming events organized by UKM-YSD chair, even the Datu Dajijan mentioned in the beginning, but I just want to refresh you again, reminding you, please don't forget to join in our future or upcoming events. So there will be next week, 4th International Conference on Science and Technology Applications in Climate Change. In short, we call it ISTACLIM 2021, which will be held on 1st to 2nd July 2021. For your information, the good news is the opening session is open for public. There will be 3 keynote speeches. So please feel free to join that. I guess they have shared the link with you on the chat box. So the opening ceremony and the morning session with 3 keynote speech will be open for public. Now, in the next month, there will be 2nd Sustainability Talk Series will be held on 26th July. 26th July, the speakers are Datu Dr. Azijan Baharuddin. I am sure you have already known her. And there will be another speaker is Professor Shui Yu from Fengchia University, Taiwan. At the end of this year, 16th Asian Biohydrogen and Biorefinery Symposium and Sustainability Challenge will be held from 15 to 17 December 2021. So I hope we'll receive your continuous support for all these events. In case you need any additional information, please do let us know by email or social media platforms. So ladies and gentlemen, let's take a group photo and turn on your I would like to request all the participants to turn on your camera. We miss being physically and seeing face to face. we have to admit and accept this unprecedented situation. So let's move ahead and then let's see our smile and face each other. Thank you.
We taking the picture?
Please let us know once it's done.
Yeah. Okay.
So maybe we wait for 10 seconds to all to turn the camera.
Sure.
Okay, everyone. Okay, please smile.
Assalamualaikum.
Salam.
Bye.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Wait. Wait for a while. Okay, another one. We're doing the freestyle. Okay. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Aizam. Thank you, everyone. Datuk, you wanted to say something, Datuk?
No, I just hope we did justice to Yayasan Samdabi, who is the most important player also in all of today's event, all the other events. So we'll probably do a nice letter, Prof. Nizam, to Yayasan Samdabi. Samdabi, Dr. Iyad is the one of the major palm oil amongst other industry in the country. So they finance the chair and they finance a lot of work on the ground. So this is a very good example also in Malaysia of industry, university cooperation in terms of climate change. Thank you so much.
Inshallah.
Thank you, Datuk.
Yeah, thank you so much. So
Thank
sad to
you.
leave everybody. Hope to see you again soon.
All
So
right.
this marks the
Right,
end
thank
of
you.
today's session. We look forward to see you all at the upcoming events. Thank you very
Right.
much, everyone.
Thank you so
Stay
much.
safe. God bless
Okay.
you all.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Assalamualaikum, everyone.